On fire this camp. You've been having a really good camp. Have you seen some of the stuff that people are saying about you?
I seen a little bit of
Just a little bit?
it. Yeah.
It doesn't do anything for you? I mean, I know that a lot of times you guys are like internally motivated, but it has to feel good to see other people kind of recognizing your worth.
I mean, it feels good, but like, I can't even really explain the feeling because I want to really put it on show instead of in practice all the time, you know? Really put it out there so they can see it in the real game other than just practice, because I could do it in practice every day, but I want to be able to showcase that in the real game and stuff.
That answer tells you exactly where Jimmy Horn Jr.'s head is. Practice highlights are nice, praise is nice, but he is basically saying none of it counts until he proves it when the game is real. And that distinction is going to matter a lot more than the hype around one impressive route.
But this is what I mean by getting a lot of value out of what you're doing as Jimmy Horn. Look at this route. He's going to work inside. Ew! That boy is moving bodies. And to add insult to injury, to add to the spacing of the whole thing, he doesn't just bend this out. No, instead, he's going to try to stack and get more vertical so he can completely finish his route. Those are the small things also that I don't think Jimmy Horn Jr. gets enough respect for as a good route runner, as he's going to go give a nasty head fake. He's going to run inside, hit a Euro step, and then again, use his arms. Let's swim.
Watch what happens before the ball ever has a chance to find him. Horn wins inside, throws the defender off balance, uses the head fake, works through contact, and then keeps climbing vertically instead of lazily drifting toward the sideline. That sounds like a tiny detail until you understand what is actually being evaluated in an NFL receiver room. Coaches are not only asking whether you can get open, they are asking whether you understand why the route is designed the way it is, whether your spacing helps the quarterback, and whether your movement creates problems for the rest of the coverage. And there is another part of this story that matters even more. Carolina does not have an empty receiver room waiting for somebody to claim a jersey. Horn is trying to survive in a group with different body types, different skill sets, and players fighting for the exact same limited snaps. Later, we need to look at why that competition could actually help him rather than hurt him, because Horn may have one advantage that does not show up neatly on a traditional depth chart.
Let's push past, and like I alluded to, it would be very easy if you're a lazy route runner. Look, you've already beat your defender. Go ahead and go right here. Now, and again, it doesn't matter because the ball goes right here. But the reason why you don't want to just drift out, not only are you gonna miss out on space going towards the sideline, but then on top of that, you've got an under route here, right? You've got this flat route that theoretically, if there was a defender, let's say a squatting, a corner that's trying to occupy this space, you're not really putting him in a lot of conflict. You're making it easier for one person to cover both of y'all and shut this down. Instead, Jimmy Horn stays very disciplined, tries to stack, get vertical, and this guy is still slipping.
That is the technical argument for Horn. He had already created separation, yet he still finished the route correctly. He did not turn one successful move into bad spacing for another receiver underneath. That discipline is important because fringe roster battles are often decided by the plays where you are not getting the football. Anybody can look useful when the quarterback feeds him targets. Coaches notice whether you stay precise when you are the decoy, whether you clear space correctly, and whether you execute a concept knowing somebody else is probably getting the catch. That is why simply calling Horn fast does not really capture the case he is making. Speed gets attention. Route detail earns trust. And for somebody fighting through second and third team repetitions, trust might be more valuable than another viral one-on-one clip.
Yo, that man, hey, Jimmy Horn like a Madden character. This boy went from running a nasty route, looking for the football. As soon as the football was caught, he said, "Oh no, I'm about that action. Get out the club, son. Come on, don't mess with Jay, please." Oh, is this the same? I think this might be the same route. Oh, Kenny Pickett, we gotta pay my man. Oh, it looked like it hit his hand. Oh, y'all can't see. Hold up. There it go, right there. It hit him in that left hand.
Then you get the other side of him. He finishes the route, immediately turns into a blocker, gets physical after the catch, and on the next rep appears to get a hand on a ball that was just beyond him. That sequence matters because smaller receivers constantly have to answer the same question in the NFL. What happens when the game gets physical? Horn cannot change his height. What he can control is whether defenders and coaches perceive him as somebody who plays small. Those are two different things. The film here shows a receiver willing to work through traffic, use his arms, attack leverage, and engage after the catch instead of becoming a spectator. You can debate where he belongs on the depth chart, but the easier criticism would be to say his frame automatically limits his usefulness. These clips make that argument harder. And now the roster battle gets uncomfortable because Carolina has to evaluate usefulness, not sentiment. Nobody receives an NFL roster spot because the story is inspiring. Horn has to give the staff reasons to activate him on Sundays, and those reasons have to extend beyond being exciting with the ball.
From notes, it says, Bryce, incompletion intended for Coker, completion to Leggett, drop by Moore, completion, blah, 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 Pickett, completion to Ty, okay, this is Kenny Pickett, completion to Tyus, complete to Horn Jr. on a crossing route, complete to Tremaine on a touchdown, and then Trask, complete out on Horn, and then complete dig. So what you're seeing is Jimmy Horn is getting runs with the 2s and with the 3s, and also, like number one Panthers dog is going to point out, hey, Jimmy Horn Jr. continues to make a case.
That practice report gives us something more concrete. Horn is showing up on crossing routes, underneath completions, and a touchdown while getting work with the 2s and 3s. The important phrase is not that he caught one particular pass. It is that he continues to appear in the opportunities he receives. For a player in this position, volume can be deceptive. A starter can have a quiet practice and nobody wonders whether he will be employed next week. A receiver battling for the back end of the rotation does not have that luxury. Every limited rep becomes a miniature audition. One wrong split, one missed assignment, or one failed block can weigh more heavily because there may only be a handful of chances to counter it. That creates a strange pressure. Horn has to play aggressively enough to separate himself without forcing plays that are not there. He needs to look dynamic without abandoning the structure of Dave Canales' offense. And he has to demonstrate that he can function with multiple quarterback groups because those are the kinds of circumstances a reserve receiver could face during a season. This is where the story becomes more interesting than, did Jimmy Horn make a nice catch? The real question is whether Carolina can identify a role for him that another receiver cannot replicate as efficiently.
Shout out Xavier Weaver. I'm just putting the video on in the background because sometimes I like yapping. But my thing is that I think a lot of people don't take Jimmy Horn Jr. serious. For whatever reason, whether it's the Deion Sanders ties and people love disrespecting Deion Sanders, or whether it's just the size, whether it's him being on a Carolina team, right? I don't think a lot of people look at Carolina as a premier team. Regardless, I think Jimmy Horn Jr. does so many things, not just from a technical aspect, but from a working and just tenacity aspect, right? I think there's so much respect that needs.
The skepticism around Horn probably comes from several directions at once. He is not built like the prototype outside receiver. His profile was tied heavily to Colorado and Deion Sanders, which guarantees that some people will bring their existing opinions about that program into the evaluation. And he is trying to break through on a Carolina roster that does not automatically command national attention. Strip all of that away, and the evaluation gets cleaner. Can he separate? Can he understand spacing? Can he survive contact? Can he help when he is not targeted? Can his speed force a defense to respect areas of the field that look different when he is out there? Those are football questions, and that is where Horn has a stronger argument. The temptation with a player like this is to make everything about adversity. His personal journey is meaningful, and the original discussion references the difficulties he has experienced with his family and throughout his life. But that cannot become a substitute for the football evaluation. If anything, the more interesting point is that his approach appears consistent with somebody who understands that nothing is guaranteed. He is not treating praise from camp as an accomplishment. He is treating it as evidence that he may be earning another opportunity. And if you are watching this battle from Carolina's perspective, that mentality becomes relevant because the final receiver spots are rarely reserved for one-dimensional specialists. Those players are often asked to cover kicks, block, handle motion, execute gadget concepts, and learn multiple receiver positions. The question is not whether Horn can produce a highlight. The question is whether his total package gives Canales enough weekly utility to justify keeping him active.
Anyway, Jalen Coker is a problem. So, two things. First thing, I want to acknowledge that if you're not familiar with the Panthers, maybe you haven't watched, you haven't watched my channel. But shout out to Big Triz, #1 Panthers fan in my community. He always knows what's going on. And one thing, in Trizzy, you can always step in and let me know when I am wrong. What's going on, Intel? You can always let me know when I am wrong. I think something that defines you, if I were to say something about the Panthers, that, hey, where their upside is that.
And there is the complication. Jalen Coker is not disappearing. Carolina has legitimate competition in this room, and that means every positive Horn rep has to be judged against somebody else's positive rep. That is actually better for evaluating Horn because it removes the easy narrative. He is not being handed an opportunity because the Panthers have nobody else. He is trying to force his way through a room where other receivers bring things he does not. Some offer more size. Some offer more established NFL experience. Others can win through strength or a different route profile. Horn therefore needs differentiation. Think about roster construction less like ranking receivers from best to worst and more like assembling a toolbox. If several players solve the same problem, the fourth version of that tool can become expendable. But if one receiver gives the offense a movement skill or speed dimension that changes how a defense has to align, his value can exceed where he appears on a generic depth chart. That is the opening Horn is fighting for. A condensed formation can hide a receiver's release and create traffic. Motion can identify coverage or manufacture leverage. Jet action can widen defenders even when the receiver never touches the football. An explosive player can influence a defense without recording a target, provided the defense genuinely respects what happens if it ignores him. Now connect that back to those early route clips. Horn was not simply improvising because he was quicker than a camp defender. He was showing some understanding of where his route needed to finish in relation to another route underneath. If Carolina believes it can combine that discipline with his movement ability, suddenly the conversation changes from small receiver fighting for a roster spot to specific offensive piece that gives the play caller another answer.
Story, and I think that goes back into Jimmy Horn Jr.'s mindset, not only because that's just who Jimmy Horn is. All right, he's like, it's cool that y'all think that, you know what I'm saying, that what's it called, the highlights are cool and the one-on-ones. I've shown you 1,000 one-on-ones where Jimmy Horn Jr. is just cooking his teammates, whatever. But he's like, all I care about is being on the football field. I care about actually making an impact where it matters. So it's good to see that. And especially, again, going back to that mindset in a room like this, so dynamic, so large. So I'm just happy that Jimmy is keeping in that way. Hey, I don't really care about beating up on my teammates. I care about how do I get out there and how do I continue to take those next.
Horn himself basically rejects the easiest version of his own hype. He knows the one-on-ones look good. He knows people see the clips, but his standard is whether he can transfer that into an actual game. That matters because one-on-one drills favor spectacle. There is no disguised zone behind the corner. There is no linebacker passing you into another defender. There is no protection breakdown forcing the quarterback off schedule. There is no safety changing the picture after the snap. Real offensive football asks a receiver to process all of those variables while preserving timing with the quarterback. Horn wanting to prove it there is exactly the right attitude, but it also exposes the remaining uncertainty. Camp buzz does not guarantee a roster spot. A handful of preseason snaps do not guarantee one either. What Carolina needs to determine is whether the flashes survive when the structure becomes messier. Can he separate when defenders know the down and distance? Can he stay available for the quarterback against zone? Can he block strongly enough that his presence does not tell the defense what kind of play is coming? Can he contribute on special teams if offensive snaps are scarce? That last part is especially important for players near the back of a receiver rotation. You may love the sixth receiver as a developmental offensive weapon, but game day roster economics force coaches to ask whether he can contribute elsewhere. If another reserve catches nearly as well while playing more special teams roles, that can decide the spot. So the strongest case for Horn cannot merely be that he deserves more targets. It has to become that Carolina can do multiple useful things when number 18 is available. And this is where we finally start approaching the central answer. The reason Horn has a realistic path is not because the Panthers should ignore the size concerns or the competition. It is because his path does not require him to beat every other receiver at their own game. He only needs to become valuable enough in his own role that removing him creates something the offense cannot replace as easily.
Interesting. That's it for the Jimmy Horn Jr. wide receiver updates there. Well, this is kind of a wide receiver update. Trizzy, you gotta let me know how you feel about this. But I don't know how y'all feel. Y'all know who Darren Waller is? Darren Waller, ex rapper turned. Please don't look up Darren Waller's rap song. I need you not to go look up Darren Waller's rap song when you're done with this. But he has officially signed with the Carolina Panthers. And you talk about Darren Waller, talk about interesting stories, right? This is a guy with all the talent in the world, has gone through a lot of different situations, and you know, scrutiny, and you know, pays and not pays. And I mean, obviously he was just with the Miami Dolphins. He's clearly a very talented tight end that can go up and get you some really good receptions. He really has.
The receiver discussion then bleeds into the larger offensive picture, because Carolina adding another pass-catching threat changes how every skill player can be used. Darren Waller is a tight end, not a receiver competing directly with Horn for the same job, but another credible target can change personnel packages and spacing. Waller has demonstrated receiving talent during his NFL career, particularly when he can use his size against defenders who cannot match him physically. If Carolina believes he can still offer useful snaps, the offense suddenly has another potential matchup piece in the middle of the field and around the red zone. Why does that matter to Horn? Because offensive value is relational. A speed receiver looks different when a defense also has to account for a larger target inside. A motion player looks different when linebackers cannot simply expand because they are worried about what is happening behind them. Likewise, Waller's opportunities can become cleaner if horizontal movement forces defenders to hesitate. None of that guarantees how the Panthers will deploy either player, but it shows why reducing the entire conversation to a numbered receiver ranking can be misleading. Canales has to decide which combinations stress defenses. Maybe one package wants size, another could prioritize blocking, another might put speed in motion to manufacture a free release. There could be snaps where Horn gets the ball on a design touch, snaps where he runs a clear out, and snaps where the entire purpose of his movement is to make one defender take two unnecessary steps before the real concept develops somewhere else. That kind of utility is difficult to see in a box score, yet coaches build game plans around it. And it also explains why Horn finishing routes correctly matters so much. A gadget player who cannot execute the details becomes predictable. A real receiver who also possesses gadget player explosiveness is much more difficult to defend.
About when did you first hear from the Panthers? Why was it important to agree to terms on the day that you did?
I heard from the Panthers Wednesday morning when my agent called me. So I wake up, go train, I called. Anybody that offered me a job, I was going to play. So great the Panthers offered me the opportunity to play. They decided to do it.
Waller's comments offer another reminder of how quickly NFL circumstances move. According to his answer, Carolina reached out through his agent and the opportunity developed from there. One day, a roster has one shape, then a veteran arrives and the coaching staff has another option to incorporate. That constant movement is exactly why players like Horn cannot relax based on an unofficial depth chart in August. The roster is never truly frozen. Injuries happen, veterans become available, somebody impresses on special teams, somebody else struggles with an assignment. A player who appears safely inside the rotation can suddenly find himself challenged, while a player buried with the third unit can gain ground in 3 practices. The response cannot be panic, it has to be usefulness. Horn's public comments suggest he understands that. He does not sound like somebody asking people to declare him a winner because he had a good camp. He sounds like somebody trying to accumulate enough evidence that the coaches cannot easily dismiss him, and that is an important distinction. Fans tend to debate roster battles emotionally. This player deserves it, that player has to make it, the team would be crazy to release somebody. Coaches have to make a colder calculation. How many snaps can this player realistically receive? Which roles does he cover? What happens if a starter gets hurt? Does keeping him require sacrificing depth somewhere else? Can he contribute immediately while still developing? Horn needs favorable answers to enough of those questions. His advantage is that speed creates possibilities. His challenge is that possibilities only matter if the staff trusts the execution.
Horn, you know what I mean? So let me know how y'all feel about the Jimmy Horn Jr. update. Again, getting some burn in the preseason, been running with the second team. He's still listed as the second team for what's it called, wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. So he's behind Xavier Legette. If that updates you, I'll let y'all know. Preseason reps, he's been running with the 2s, which means he's, technically probably going to be wide receiver 4 or 5 if I had to think, right? Because, the depth charts, they don't really tell you, in the rotation where they are. It kind of tells you like a rough idea, but I think he's still going to be utilized for, a lot of those end arounds, different things. Dave Canales would be wrong, especially the way Jimmy Horn Jr. is.
And now we can land the real argument. Horn running with the second team and appearing around the 4th or 5th receiver conversation does not prove that he has secured anything. Depth charts in the preseason are fluid, and even the original commentary correctly warns that they provide only a rough picture of a rotation. But the interesting part is what comes after that, the suggestion that Canales would be leaving something unused if he never found ways to deploy a player with Horn's particular traits. That is the strongest version of the case. Not that Horn should make the Panthers because people like his story. Not that he should make it because he played at Colorado. Not that a few practice clips automatically prove he is ready to become an NFL starter. He has a case because the evidence in front of us shows multiple characteristics that can translate into a specialized role. Separation quickness, willingness to work through contact, attention to route spacing, vertical speed, movement potential, and an aggressive mentality when the play continues after his route. Now the burden shifts. The preseason has to turn those ingredients into undeniable utility. If Horn catches a deep ball, great. But watch what happens on the snaps where he does not get targeted. Does his motion manipulate coverage? Does he execute the block? Does he run the clear out at full speed? Does he maintain the correct spacing? Does he contribute on special teams? Those are the snaps that can quietly decide whether the explosive highlight player becomes an actual NFL roster player. There is also a broader lesson here about how these battles are judged from the outside. Viewers naturally gravitate toward touchdowns and spectacular catches because those are the easiest plays to clip. Coaches possess the entire practice tape. They have assignment grades. They know who lined up incorrectly. They know who missed an adjustment against a particular coverage. They know who is trusted in a 2-minute drill and who still needs the call repeated in the huddle. So there may be information we simply do not have. That cuts both ways. It means fans should not declare Horn safe merely because his best moments look impressive. It also means a lack of preseason targets does not automatically tell us the staff is disappointed in him. Usage, assignment, and role can reveal more than raw receptions. What we can say from the material available is that Horn is giving Carolina reasons to continue the evaluation. And that may sound modest, but for a young receiver fighting inside a crowded NFL room, continuing to force the coaching staff to evaluate you is how the battle is won. You survive one cut because they want another look. You earn another group of reps because you executed the previous ones. You make one special teams play that opens another door on offense. Eventually, the staff reaches the point where releasing you feels more uncomfortable than keeping you. That is the threshold Horn is chasing. His size will remain part of the discussion. The competition will remain real. Carolina has other receivers with legitimate arguments. Nobody should pretend those obstacles disappear because Horn has become a fan favorite. But the question is no longer whether there is anything here worth developing. The tape already gives you enough to understand why Carolina keeps giving him opportunities. The final question is whether he can turn a distinctive skill set into a role the Panthers believe they need every week. So choose your side. If Carolina has one final receiver spot available, are you keeping Jimmy Horn Jr. because his speed and versatility give the offense something different, or are you choosing the safer player with more size and a more traditional profile? Drop your choice in the comments, and if you want more film-based NFL breakdowns without pretending every camp highlight guarantees stardom, like the video and subscribe.